Hello, social media, Earth Angels. I apologize for it being kind of dark in here. My light bulb just blew out. But we're going to be looking at videos, so you're going to be able to see it. But I want to say that we're going to be talking about the invisible real dangers of invisible poison that comes from radio-controlled frequency when they ping towers and breach security of the tower and cause the towers to emit this poison toxic that we're talking about, okay? I've got a video of a doctor who was giving people instructions on washing their hands and how not to contract the coronavirus, and he has contracted a coronavirus himself. But listen to his symptoms. That's what I want you to hear, okay?
This is a very relentless disease. It grabs you, and then you sort of get better, and then it comes back, and then you sort of get better, and then it comes back. So I'm in that phase where I'm running fever every night for the last 4 or 5 nights, and it just gets tiring after a while. But
anytime you hear the words coronavirus, COVID-19, pandemic, substitute the words radiation.
Runny nose, but nothing beyond that for the first 36 hours. Got a little bit worse with some muscle aches, got tested, it was positive. And by Wednesday, this is now day 5, I thought I was done with it. I felt great. And then suddenly on that Wednesday night, boom, fever, muscle aches, pain everywhere. Just a horrible feeling. But as a doctor, I kind of know what to look for. And I'm monitoring my breathing like a hawk and trying to make sure that that doesn't go south. And knock on wood, I've done well with that so far. He studied pretty well about COVID-19. I knew what it did.
Studied about COVID-19, studied about radiation, they did not.
Different in everyone. And I think what we've learned over the last couple of weeks, just in the U.S. experience, a lot of the dogma that it's only older people, that it doesn't really affect people who are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and it's okay if they get it, it's no big deal. That is not true. There are lots of 30 and 40-year-olds on respirators right now.
Right, because it's radiation. Radiation does not discriminate.
I'm monitoring every day what my symptoms are, but I really think I'm through the woods on this right now. The other point I'd like to make is that the social distancing only goes so far.
It doesn't work with radiation.
Just all stay at home. Stay at home.
Staying at home doesn't work.
Only when it's essential. That means for food, for medicines. If you're working in an essential business like healthcare or sanitation or police, fire, yes. If you're in the media, that's fine. There's essential stuff that we all have to do. But if it's not essential and you can work from home, stay at home. Minimize your interaction with others.
Staying at home does not help protect you against radiation. Nobody is talking about the effects of poisoning radiation. So here we go. Let's watch this video right quick.
Ionizing radiation is like cupcakes. 1 cupcake, that's fine. 1,000 cupcakes at once, not fine. You've probably seen acute radiation poisoning on TV, people wrapped in bandages and such, but chances are you don't know what's going on there. So let's shed some visible light radiation on this mystery, shall we? There are a few kinds of radiation. Some is light or heat, but the kind that damages tissue is called ionizing radiation. Ionizing radiation comes in high-energy waves like X-rays and gamma rays, or from nuclear material via particle decay.
Or radio-controlled frequencies.
Damage atoms, which can affect whole molecules like DNA, and that can affect your cells, organs, and eventually your whole body. For example, your cells are comprised of water, H2O, which, if broken apart by radiation, can reform as O2 or H2 or H2O2, hydrogen peroxide. Not great. Of course, this all depends on dosage. Theoretically, ionizing radiation has no safe dosage. When you get a dose of radiation, specialists use sieverts to calculate how much they used in gray for the actual absorption of radiation into tissue. A dental or stomach x-ray might be like 8 milligrays, which isn't that many, or 8 millisieverts. Repeated low-level exposure, like in tanning or working near nuclear material, can cause cancer. But when lots of ionizing radiation hits you at once, which is what we're going to talk about, it causes acute radiation poisoning, which is serious.
Radiation poisoning.
4 phases. First is prodromal. This is vomiting, nausea, diarrhea, anorexia. And
Sound
more
like what the
radiation
doctor
makes
just
this
talked
worse.
about?
It can hit you within a few minutes or days after an exposure. Second, you'd actually feel better. This is called the latent phase. You'd get over these flu-like symptoms, but you didn't actually get over them. If you had lab
Flu-like
tests, they would show
symptoms.
that you'd been poisoned by radiation.
There
Then
you
maybe
go.
weeks after that, bam, the manifest illness phase hits. That's when a bunch of bad stuff happens that we'll get into. And then 4 is recovery or death. If it's a low dosage, you can probably recover, though you may have a higher risk of cancer. However, above a certain point, the poop emoji hits the fan. Say someone was exposed to the equivalent of 125 abdomen x-rays all at once. Then they'd hit the lowest level of radiation poisoning. From 1 to 10 gray, the radiation penetrates tissue and kills bone marrow cells by damaging their DNA. No bone marrow means no replacement white blood cells in case of infection, no new red blood cells, no new platelets in case of injury. All of that is bad. It can cause death from infection or from blood loss. If your bone marrow is destroyed, you could get a bone marrow transplant, but even that only gives you a 50-50 chance. At more than 10 gray, at least 1,250 x-rays at once, cells in the gastrointestinal tract are killed, meaning the body can no longer absorb nutrients, causing electrolyte imbalances, dehydration, and worse. Once the GI tract shuts down, nothing can be done. Death is certain. Over 20 gray, 2,500 x-rays at once. It's not clear what happens, but doctors think your cardiovascular system and central nervous system swell with fluid thanks to damaged cells.
There's
In less
your
than
lung
3
problem,
days, the
see?
brain can't control the body anymore because of cell death, and that's all she wrote. Because radiation is damaging DNA at the atomic level, acute poisoning is very hard to treat. Radaway doesn't exist, but there are some treatments for some of the symptoms. For example, if you get an infection because your white blood cells are compromised, doctors can treat it. Same with the nausea, the burns, dehydration. We know a lot about this because of the disaster at Chernobyl.
That's how come
and
some
because of the
people
bombs
recover.
dropped on
Some
Japan
of it
to
can
end
be
World War
treated
II.
depending on your dose level.
Scientists entered the area studying the sick and documenting everything they could, but there's still a lot that we don't know. I mean, as scary as radiation can be, most of us will never get exposed to the dosages required to have to know all this stuff. But it's still kind of nice to know, right? This episode is sponsored by Squarespace. Whether you need a domain, website, or online store, make your next
Alright,
move
so,
with Squarespace.
let's stop
Squarespace
that there.
is used by a wide range of creatives, musicians, designers,
And
artists,
real quick, while I got a little bit of space
restaurants, and
left,
more. So start
go
your
back
free
to this
trial
doctor
today at
right quick.
joysticks.com.
It just
Use
gets
the offer
tiring
code
after a
SEEKER,
while, but
so get
fortunately I haven't had any respiratory trouble, so I'm okay.
Alright, so let's
This
go.
is a very relentless disease. It grabs you, and then you sort of get better, and then
Remember,
it comes back.
substitute the word radiation every time you hear COVID-19 or coronavirus.
Every night for the last 4 or 5 nights, and it just gets tiring after a while. But fortunately, I haven't had any respiratory trouble, so I'm okay. Symptoms are very mild to start off with. A little bit of cough, headache, runny nose, but nothing beyond that for the first 36 hours. Got a little bit worse with some muscle aches, got tested, it was positive. And by Wednesday, this is now day 5, I thought I was done with it. I felt great. And then suddenly on that Wednesday night, boom, fever, muscle aches, pain everywhere. Just a horrible feeling. But as a doctor,
Material can cause
know
cancer,
what to look
but when
for,
lots of ionizing
and
radiation
I'm
hits you
monitoring
at once,
my
which is what we're
breathing.
going to talk about, it causes acute radiation poisoning, which is serious, and it comes in 4 phases. First is prodromal. This is vomiting, nausea, diarrhea, anorexia, and
I'm
more
putting these two
radiation makes
together,
this
y'all.
worse. It can hit you within a few minutes or days after an exposure. Second, you'd actually feel better. This is called the latent phase. You'd get over these flu-like symptoms, but you didn't actually get over them. If you'd had lab tests, they would show that you'd been poisoned by radiation. Then maybe weeks after that, bam, the manifest illness phase hits. That's when a bunch of bad stuff happens that we'll get into. And then 4 is recovery or death. If it's a low
Alright,
dosage,
so that's what we're talking about. And these are the symptoms that he's talking about.
Like a hawk, and trying to make sure that that doesn't go south, and knock on wood. Muscle aches, pain everywhere, just a horrible feeling. But as a doctor, I kind of know what to look for.
Alright, so we're talking about the
I'm
invisible,
monitoring my breathing,
real
like,
effects of radiation poisoning. Alright, I'm Kevin Weathers. I'm the CEO of the Messiah Pay Raise. Nobody's talking about radiation.